Good morning, everyone. My name is Azania Tripp, and I'm the Pan-African Director here at Augsburg University. It is my honor to welcome you to the 23rd Annual Martin Luther King Jr. Convocation Celebration. And this year, we're virtual. So thank you for being here on Zoom today. I will start out with a land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge that we are here on Indigenous land. We reside on the traditional territories of the Dakota people. We recognize that human diversity is a fundamental strength of our community and that racism and oppression have caused long-lasting harm and intergenerational trauma. We acknowledge that today is crucial, and it is necessary to take the steps towards decolonization. I also want to honor and acknowledge the overwhelming challenges that we have all experienced this year. From the COVID virus pandemic to the continuation and the historical brutalization of BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color, and LGBTQ+, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, questioning people, underscored by countless murders, including Breonna Taylor, Jacob Blake, Tiana Hall, Dalla Eid, and George Floyd, murdered in our city of Minneapolis by police. And then 12 days ago, on January 6th, we witnessed the insurrection of the US Capitol by a mob of white supremacists, and they were incited by our sitting president in support for voter suppression. And for the first time, the Confederate battle flag was walked throughout the Capitol. And today is Monday, January 18th, and we are here to celebrate Martin Luther King Jr.'s life and legacy and pay tribute to his social justice work. And we are here to continue the path that he forged to understand the injustices everywhere. So we are here today to share our stories, our art, our activism, and the lifelong journey of healing. So first, we will all warm up with a performance by our student group, Afro Dynamics. Feel free to move with the music. Thank you.
Otimbi na timbelio. Wasafi. Enough. Soba no kakats. Lata. No kakats. Jizo. Odele mino na kwe. Osali no lokote. Otoki no kutute. Na pete kaka bongo. Yo beba pesa ya. Yo beba pesa ya. Cléopâtre Mukula. Otele mino na kwe, osali no lokote, na motokia chibude, wataka ule wewe, yo beba pesa yo. Yo beba pesa yo. Les pacificateurs jusqu'au bout, Vital Kameni. Yuma no gagati, Zoba no gagati. Yuma no gagati, Zoba no gagati. Pesa kote shimale, pesa na, pesa kote shimale. Eba mo Jesu ni wo. Pesa kote shimale, pesa na, pesa kote shimale. Shimale, pesa kote shimale. Pesa na, pesa kote shimale. Shimale, pasa de shimale. Pesa na, you want that shimale.
Then hurry, hurry, come carry your baby, go. Come and see my mother, my mother. You must see my mother, my mother. Come and see my mother, hey. My mother. You must see my mother, my mother. Come and carry on your marks, come and carry. If you want, come and carry.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Berlin B. Tango. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am the student body president. This morning, I have the honor of introducing the university pastor, Babette Chapman, who will be providing the invocation this morning.
Good morning. Greetings from your Augsburg University campus ministry. I have been invited to offer the invocation, and I honor Dr. King and his legacy, and many of the words will be from Dr. King, either his speeches, his prayers, or his quotes. Dr. King said the function of education is to teach one to think intensely and to think critically, intelligence plus character. That is the goal of true education. The complete education gives one not only power of concentration, but worthy objectives upon which to concentrate. Let us enter into a time of prayer to invite the presence of God. Mothering God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, we gather in the spirit of justice and equality. We gather in the spirit of love. We gather in the holy imagination of art in all its forms as activism and healing. Mother and God, we thank you for the fact that you have inspired humanity in all nations and in all cultures. We call you different names. Some call you Allah, some call you Elohim, some call you Jehovah, some call you Brahma, some call you the unmoved mover. But we know that these are all names for one and the same God. Grant that we will follow you and become so committed to your way and your kingdom that we will be able to establish in our lives and in this world a siblinghood, that we will be able to establish here a kingdom of understanding where all humanity will live together, all siblings, and respect the dignity and worth of every human being. Still in us, the audacity to believe that peoples everywhere can have 3 meals a day for their bodies, education and culture for their minds, and dignity, equality, and freedom for their spirits. It's in the name and the spirit of Jesus we pray. Amen and amen. I would like to now introduce Tisha, who will announce our next presentation.
Hello, I am Tisha. My pronouns is she, her, hers. I am a first year and a Pan-African Fellow. Up next, we will hear from Travion Delop performing a pre-recorded video from last year performing the Black National Anthem.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. 2, 3, 4. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won.
Fire. Hey everyone, My name is Terrence Shambley Jr. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a senior here at Augsburg and am the co-executive editor of the school newspaper, The Echo. Um, I am also one of the students that was a member of the CREST working group for the Department of Critical Race and Ethnicity Studies. And I'm happy to announce that starting in the fall of this year, students will be able to take classes in Africana studies, Asian American studies, and Latinx studies. And that's something that students have been demanding for as far back as 1968. The department will include 5 tenure track faculty trained in the methodologies of ethnic studies, and the search committee hired 3 of those faculty was formed last week with the goal of identifying candidates, final candidates by mid-March. With that being said, I welcome Paul Pribenow to provide us with some welcoming remarks.
Thank you, Terrence. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this annual celebration of the life and work of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., an occasion each year when we, Augsburg community and our friends from the wider community, renew our personal and community commitments to living up to Dr. King's call for peace and justice. So even in this virtual format, it's good to be together and to hear from our students and honored guests as they share their passion and their talents with us. I want to say a special word of thanks to Azania Tripp, who's the director of our Pan-African Center, and to her student colleagues for their creativity and hard work in making today's event happen in this virtual format. This year, as Azania said, we may need Dr. King's words and lessons more than ever as we live into this time of multiple pandemics in the midst of polarization, violence, inequity, and deep fear. Recently, I was inspired to read an essay by retired University of Notre Dame professor John Paul Lederer, who has visited Augsburg several times over the years, who reminds us of 3 pillars of Dr. King's work that are especially relevant to these times. First, Dr. King knew that waiting for change was no longer an option. What he called the fierce urgency of now was a clarion call to act for peace and justice in the world now. I'm so proud of the many ways in which the Augsburg community, students, faculty, staff, alumni, and friends have answered this call to walk the talk over many years, and especially during these past several months since the murder of George Floyd not far from our campus. Just a few examples. You think about the training programs that we put in place, a diversity and inclusion certificate program that has really doubled the number of people participating this year. We've now mandated university-wide anti-racism training that has already had 230 of our faculty and staff go through that training. We have amazing scholarship and teaching going on among our faculty colleagues. Just this morning, Professors Peg Finders and Terrence Kwame Ross from the Education Department led a group of us through a workshop, what they call white talk moves in higher education. We also want to lift up Professor Bill Green, the inaugural Anita Gay Hawthorne Professor in Critical Race and Ethnic Studies, whose several books have brought to light the history of racism in our state. And as Terrence said, we are so proud that the Critical Race and Ethnicity Studies Department planning is well underway. We're also lifting up our students in so many other ways. We have a new scholarship named after George Floyd that was established this fall and has been funded by generous gifts from students, from faculty, from staff, and from alumni. We also are so proud that that program is going to be transformed into a fellowship program that'll be available to our students for this coming fall. It's a fellowship that will seek to grow the professional networks of our students, connect them with Black mentors or Indigenous and other people of color as mentors, strengthen their leadership skills based on Afrocentric principles, and create supportive and motivating cohorts during their junior and senior years. And finally, I just lift up our Inclusion Scholars Program. It's a program that just started this fall for our students that develops equity-minded student leaders. And it started just in the fall and already has 70 participants and 15 graduates. So I could go on and on with these campus efforts, but I also want to honor the many ways members of our community are acting in the many spaces they occupy in the world, especially during these pandemic times, including their participation in peaceful protests and political advocacy, in public service, and so much more. The second pillar from Dr. King is his reminder that the struggle for dignity and equity will not happen as quickly as we might like. It's a long and arduous journey. His words on the National Monument in Washington, D.C. make this challenge clear. He says, we must hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. Seems especially fitting that this year's theme for this MLK Convocation is Art is Activism and Healing, pointing to the important role of the arts and artists in helping us speak and sing and paint and sculpt that stone of hope that gives us inspiration to move ahead, even in the face of so many obstacles. And the final pillar from Dr. King is his steadfast belief in nonviolence and the fact that we need each other to do this work, especially in these days when violence swirls all around us, even in the sacred halls of Congress. We are reminded that, as Dr. King said, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Amen to that. It's good to be with you on this important day and in this important and urgent work. Stay strong, my friends.
Awesome. Thank you, President Perbanel, for those remarks. Good morning, everybody. My name is Zachary Abdullahi. I'm the president for the Pan-African Student Union, also known as PASU, and I use he, him, his pronouns. And on behalf of PASU and myself, I would like to welcome all students, staff, faculty, alumni, and community members joining us today. I would also like to pay homage to all the students of African descent who paved the way for those of us currently on this campus. Today, I have the honor of introducing this year's keynote speaker, Justin Tolliver. Justin is a Black, queer, and gender nonconforming facilitator, trainer, educator, organizer, and abolitionist who until very recently was serving as the assistant director of Gender and Sexuality Center for Queer and Trans Life at the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities. Justin is now the lead membership and base building organizer at Black Visions Collective. Black Visions Collective is a Black-led queer and trans-centering organization whose mission is to organize powerful, connected Black communities and dismantle systems of violence. Justin completed their Bachelor's of Science from Central Michigan University and received their Master's of Arts in Student Affairs Administration and Higher Education from Bell State University. Justin deeply believes in the power of community and approaches all aspects of their work from a human-centered, imagination-driven, and Black queer feminist lens. So please welcome Justin on this virtual stage.
Good morning, everyone. It is truly an honor to share virtual space with each of you on this special day. Thank you to the Pan-African Center at Augsburg University for inviting me here today. I am overwhelmed by all the love, the validation, and the affirmation and support I have received from so many people who are watching today. Thank you, and I love you so deeply. I'm already feeling emotional today as we've seen so many beautiful things in the span of just being together already. You know, I heard Azania's beautiful intro and videos of Black folks experiencing joy and movement, and I feel moved today. So before I begin, I want to hold space, acknowledge and honor some important things. First, it is of the utmost importance that as we gather, no matter where we find ourselves virtually this morning, we acknowledge the sacred land we're on. It is because of genocide, of colonization, and more systems at play that we find ourselves here today. I know that words are not enough. Collectively, we must join hand in hand to cultivate action and support the indigenous folks of this land. In Minnesota, we know there is work happening as we speak in this very moment. I also want to acknowledge my ancestors, and I can, you know, before I started, I asked that they would guide me today and they would allow me to speak my truth. And I feel them all around me, which I'm so grateful for. And I mean acknowledging all of my ancestors, for without their struggle and their resistance, I would not be here today. I ask for healing for their souls, hope for their hearts, and affirmation that their work will continue. My friends, we are living in challenging times. We often do not have the space to talk about it. It often feels like we should just buckle down and proceed as normal. There is nothing normal about where we find ourselves right now. I want to thank you for showing up today. You know, even just getting out of bed and going about your routine can feel like the weight of the world, right? In these current times. And so I just want to acknowledge that maybe you're really tired of Zoom. Maybe you've been on Zoom all week, and you start your week again on Zoom. And so thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up, and thank you for coming with open minds and open hearts. To honor the over 300,000 lives we have lost to COVID, lives we've lost to police brutality and violence, to anti-trans violence, and many other factors, we're going to take a moment of silence and reflection. Please fill this virtual space with love, with memories of your loved ones. Thank you. Today, we celebrate the life and the work of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. MLK Day has always had a special place in my heart. When I was young, I remember not having the day off from school. My mother was never the type of person to let us miss school. No matter if I was sick, if I wasn't feeling it, we were in the schoolhouse. But MLK Day was different. I remember her taking the time to explain why we needed to observe the day, why it was disappointing to her that my newly majority white school did not give us the day off. When I went off to college at Central Michigan University in 2011 is when I started to truly think deeper about this day and what it has meant for me and for my people. At that time, I was really starting to come into my own understanding of systemic racism, oppression, power, and privilege. My alma mater would host the most gorgeous Martin Luther King brunch where folks from all over would gather and break bread together. I sang in an a cappella group who would always have a reserved table towards the front of the room. When I was asked to speak today, I couldn't help but think of all the speeches, all the words I heard over the years at that event. It is truly a full circle moment for me to be here with you today. My hope is to give voice to the things I've always wanted to hear at a MLK Day celebration. So today, I want to talk about the simple idea of imagination. Imagination is the foundation of art and activism. In the last year or so, I have been inspired by the idea of imagination. As I've aged, this is not necessary. Sorry, when I was young, I spent so much quality time with my imagination. As I've aged, this has not necessarily been the case. When is the last time that you spent time with your imagination? My hours of play have shifted to minutes of daydreams. When we are young, our imaginations, they're everything to us. It is how we fill our time when we're bored, how we play when no one else is around to keep us company. And for many young people, it is a tool of survival when we find ourselves in less than ideal realities. Even in realities that involve violence, hiding, abuse, etc. As I reflect on it, some of my most salient and authentic moments with my identity were sparked through imagination. For example, some of the first times I ever experienced the power of allowing myself to express my femininity were when I was young, in my room with the door closed. T-shirt on my head, singing along to the finale of Sister Act 2. Now we know Sister Act 2 is everything, definitely the best one. me standing there in awe of the magic that is Lauryn Hill. Even my connection to a higher power was sparked through imagination. As a young closeted queer person in Christian spaces, it is rare that you see your truth reflected back to you. I learned from very early on that to have a relationship I desired with God, I would have to imagine it as possible, even when folks twisted words to tell me that it was not. What do these powerful moments of imagination look like for you? What could they even look like today as a young adult, or wherever you are at in your life journey? What could these look like for you? What were those moments? As we grow, we receive messages that tell us we no longer need our imaginations. Imagination suddenly becomes non-essential. Maybe you're familiar with the Corinthians passage that says, when I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. Why do we view imagination as a childish pastime? Why do we deeply believe that children have nothing significant to offer the world? I want to uplift today that I believe reestablishing a relationship with our imaginations can and will shift the world around us. Alok Vaid-Menon, a gender nonconforming writer and performance artist, said this: "It can feel very isolating and lonely whenever you have an incredible vision of a world that does not exist right now. Most creatives that we admire posthumously when they were making work were not receiving their roses. But they were committed to living beyond the boundaries of their life, which meant that their work was a way of saying that my vitality will surpass my death." This quote powerfully speaks to a lot of things. Here's 3 things that I want to uplift about the quote. Give folks their roses, love them now, listen to their ideas now, celebrate them now. Acknowledge the historic work that they are doing in this very moment, and give yourself your roses too. 2, the sacred work of dismantling systems of oppression often goes beyond our lifetimes. And even though this can feel discouraging, it is a legacy that has been passed down from generation to generation, allowing us to learn from our ancestors and forge new paths towards liberation. 3, to truly be visionary means to value the imagination. Many folks cannot imagine realities outside of what exists right now. For me, I can see a world without prisons filled with Black, brown, and Indigenous trans bodies. I know a world in which Black trans women can walk down the street without fear of their lives is just beyond the horizon. I know a world is possible where Black women can sleep in their beds after a long shift at work without wondering if they will wake up the next day. Although this is far from the reality of the present, my ancestors have shown us that the worlds that exist in our imagination can manifest through the power of community. And when I say community, I don't mean those who live around you or in your residence hall. When I say community, I mean how we truly take care of one another when systems, policies, procedures, and institutions fail us. The Black, Indigenous, and LGBTQ communities have shown us this time and time again. One of the most fitting examples of imagination-fueled leadership is Martin Luther King Jr. MLK was a visionary, specifically a radical visionary, although this is not often included in the narrative that we learn about him. I am here to say transparently that MLK was a radical. A lot of folks of all colors did not agree with MLK's ideologies. People during his life could simply not envision or wrap their head around a world in which Black folks had humanity, a world where Black people could even drink from the same water fountain. In many people's minds, we would never get to that place, and we should never get to that place. MLK had to be able to imagine his dream as reality. During a time where I could imagine that hope was in scarcity, where folks told him every day that what he imagined was silly, Although 2020 and 21 have transparently shown us that we have yet to reach that place. His dream continues to live on through the work of so many folks like the Black youth and community organizers in cities across the United States who put their bodies on the front line for Black lives. Folks like Stacey Abrams and my close family friend Simone Bell, who transformed the Black voter turnout in the state of Georgia. Folks like Lasaya Wade and Jamie Mizrahi, who are working diligently in Chicago and Detroit to get Black trans women and people alive and safe in their own communities. Folks right here in Minneapolis, like the fierce Marcia Howard and every single volunteer who was holding down George Floyd Square to preserve it as a space for justice. Earlier, I spoke about that I wanted to give voice to the things that I wanted to hear on MLK Day, and here's what I want to center. When I hear about MLK, I often think about a collective community of committed radical visionaries. Once again, this is not the image that we're painted when we're young. I am grateful for Joyce Baugh, professor of the Civil Rights Movement at Central Michigan University, a class that changed my life. Through that course is when I learned about the visionary, unapologetic, and unrelenting leadership of Black women and Black LGBTQ people in the Civil Rights Movement. Many would even say the driving force behind the movement. Folks like Ella Baker, who organized young Black college students in astronomical numbers. Folks like Bayard Rustin, a gay Black man and MLK's primary advisor, who was forced behind the scenes due to his unapologetic commitment to his authenticity. There are lessons to learn from this history. Charlene Carruthers, author of Unapologetic, shameless plug, Unapologetic, a Black queer feminist mandate for radical movements, beautifully puts into words thinking about the Black radical tradition through what she and the organization BYP 100 coined a Black queer feminist lens. She says, as I define it, the Black queer feminist lens is a political practice and theory based in Black feminist and LGBTQ traditions and knowledge, through which people and groups seek to bring their full selves into the process of dismantling all systems of oppression. It is an aspiration and a liberatory politic that Black folks must take up for the sake of our collective liberation. It acts on the basic notion that none of us will be free unless all of us are free. The Black queer feminist lens recognizes all of those who came before us and helps us to see where we want to go. The first time I read these words, I felt seen in a way that I have never before. To have someone speak so directly to my experience of feeling erased, an erasure that happens so frequently when you hold the identities I and my communities do. Too often, we as Black, queer, and trans people are cast out to the margins. Unfortunately, this is true even within our own communities and by our own people. We are told that our truth is a contradiction, that our lived experiences are fallacies of choice, that we are not capable or worthy of leading. I am in direct opposition to that wildly false narrative. Black, queer, and trans people have continuously blazed trails for everyone here today. Without the work of my Black, queer, and trans ancestors, we would not be where we are. My mind thinks about Bayard Rustin, what it must have felt like as an openly gay Black man during that time. Even today, it is often a combination facing multiple threats of damnation and prejudice. My heart cracks when I think about him having to choose his Blackness or his sexuality, his people or his truth, the movement or his authenticity. Sadly, I do know this feeling in a number of contexts. I believe Bayard had to use his imagination while working behind the scenes of the civil rights movement. Simultaneously, he had to be able to imagine that one day all Black folks would be seen and treated as equal human beings, and openly gay Black folks and queer and trans Black folks could stand tall in their truth, that they would not have to work in the back of the house in silence, that folks one day would understand our fates are intertwined. I am honored to play a small role in manifesting Bayard's imagination. Being asked to speak today is sacred, and it is powerful. To give voice to his silence, I view directly as healing work. As all of us join in the process of reigniting our imagination this morning, I challenge you to reimagine what visionary leadership has, can, and will look like as we live on. In utilizing a Black queer feminist lens, we know that folks living on the margins experience a unique perspective, a reality of knowing what it feels like to be marginalized from countless angles. These are the people who hold our collective liberation. When we trust and invest in the lives and leadership of Black disabled people, we increase all aspects of our access. When we trust and invest in the lives and leadership of Black trans women, we increase all aspects of our safety. When we trust and invest in the lives and leadership of Indigenous people, we increase all aspects of our planet's sustainability. As Charlene offers, it is truly all of us or none of us. As I wrap up today, I want to bring us into the present. I started this morning by acknowledging the amplified and tragic times we find ourselves living in. Many of us have had to face some of the most tragic moments of our lives in the span of a year. My own family continues to navigate how we heal from losing my father to COVID-19. In reality, to COVID-19 and systemic racism, but that's a different keynote address. In my own healing process, I have had to tap into my imagination many times during 2020, and I believe you have too. So many of us are finding ways to be okay each and every day. Imagining a future in which we don't need masks to see our loved ones, a future where we can enjoy a holiday wherever we'd like to spend it. For me, tapping into my imagination is how I make it from one day to the next. That is not silly nor childish. It is real, and it is survival. And even though the reality feels not close enough, we continue to imagine. For us to make it to that glorious day, we have to first be able to imagine it. To anyone who is listening today who woke up unsure if they can make it to another day, I see you. I hear you. And trust me when I say you are not alone. Even in the darkest of times, we have our imagination, our personal time machine to instantly transport us to better days of the past and the future. Alongside our imaginations, our communities, alongside our imaginations are our communities, our people. Although it feels like we don't have direct access like we used to, they are still here. It is in intense moments of challenge, isolation, loss, that I am reminded of the power that lives within community. Call those people, join those Zoom calls. I am not the person who loves hopping on a Zoom call for non-work related things, but join those Zoom calls. Try out that support group you've been thinking about joining, download that app you've been thinking about trying. If you're looking for deeper community, keep searching. Do not give up. It is out there, and it may even come from the very last place you expect. Finally, I have heard this day described as a day on and not a day off for a very long time. In 2021, we know that this is more necessary than ever before. There is work to be done, and the timer has already begun. I encourage each and every one of you to get involved in your communities. Yes, and I mean in your own neighborhoods, with your own neighbors. Imagine and dream together. Can you see the transformation that is possible when we not only join together physically, but mentally, emotionally, cognitively, and spiritually? What could community safety look like without having to dial 911? What could locally grown food and reducing food insecurity in your neighborhood and communities look like? For something to become possible, you must first be able to imagine it as so. Black folks have a long and beautiful history of imagination-driven action. Thank you to my ancestors like Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Thank you to the Black ones, to the queer ones, and importantly, the Black queer ones. I thank them for never giving up, for never stopping imagining realities outside of the ones that they lived through. The work continues, my friends, and we have all the tools that we need, including the ones that we will continue to imagine and build together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Justin. That was very powerful.
Thank you.
Hello, you guys. I am James Woods. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm a student athlete and a member of Distinguished Gentlemen of Color and Multicultural Student Services Center in the LGBTQ department. I'll be facilitating the Q&A portion. Please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen to ask any questions that you may have. We'll do our best to answer any and all of your questions. Okay, so first question. How has COVID-19 and racial unrest affected you professionally or personally?
Yeah, how has racial unrest and COVID-19 affected me personally? Totally. So all in every possible way, honestly. We'll start with COVID. You know, I had health anxiety before COVID, and so it's been really interesting navigating that during a global pandemic. But, you know, what's really the main thing that has really impacted me and my family is what I mentioned in my address is that, you know, we lost my father to COVID in April. And so one, it has been a really wild experience to experience loss from COVID so early, because, you know, March is when things really started and we got hit in April. And it still feels like even today, months later, that we're still even talking about, should we wear masks? Like, should we, you know, all of those things. And so it's been a constant process of figuring out how do I prioritize me and my family's healing in this, right? And it was so bizarre because, and this is what I said in my address was that it's a different keynote address, but you know, my family's from Detroit, okay? And my mom's a Black nurse in a Black city. And that really matters to the narrative. And when we think about who was prepared, who had resources, folks being told to come in even if you were sick, right? And it's how COVID really entered my family's life. And so I think about that as a direct systemic racism issue, right? Of why do cities like Detroit have hospitals that are for profit and that don't prioritize the lives of their mostly Black employees and patients. So that has been, you know, but there's been hope in it. You know, as I talked about the imagination pieces of like, I've been changed through COVID. I don't know how anyone could but live through COVID and not be changed. You know, and even my job transition, it was a direct, like, there's work to be done and I have the energy, I have the skills to do it. And so how do I get into community with my people to really push for things? We've seen even from the Capitol a couple weeks ago, right? There's no more time to wait. And so I encourage folks to think about what can that look like for you? It doesn't need to look like a full-time work commitment. It could look like I'm organizing in my communities. I'm establishing relationships with my neighbors so that we can talk about how do we want community safety to look like in our community? How do we start building relationships to trust the people who live directly around us and who know the dynamics of our communities? Racial unrest, you know, I feel like I've gotten, I found myself this summer being like, I'm really tired of living in this cycle. I feel like even, I have memories from even when I was like early in college where we saw folks like Trayvon Martin brutally murdered. And like, we go through this cycle, right? The murder happens, there is some unrest, right? And I remember looking back to that and being like, I remember folks weren't mad during Trayvon Martin, during Philando Castile nationwide, right? And I felt like this summer was the first time that I saw folks really being like, oh, this is a collective righteous rage, right? And so I'm tired of living in that cycle. I know my ancestors, we've been living in the cycle for so long, you know? And so thinking about how do we get together to really start breaking these cycles and even thinking about how we react to when it happens and really establishing some long-term change things. And specifically, I talked about imagination today because reform will just not be it. We've been trying reform for generations, for decades, right? And we still find ourselves here. And so to get to a place where we can believe a framework like abolition will work, we have to start at the bare minimum of our imagination, of even just of being able to imagine a world in which we had a different system. So many folks can't even picture that. And so I wanted to start getting people like playing again, you know, that childish kind of freedom in our minds to think about what a future looks like is so important.
Wow, okay, thank you. We have time for one more question from Simone Bell. What are you tapping into to care for yourself as you care for others?
Shout out to Simone Bell, everyone. If you don't know Simone Bell, you should Google Simone Bell. Simone was specifically like doing so much work as a House representative, doing so much work in communities, especially in Georgia, getting folks to vote not only once historically, twice historically. So Simone, thank you so much for being here and for your support. How am I taking care of myself? You know, a question that I'm constantly having to revisit every single day. What I will say about COVID is that it has forced us, whether it has felt good or not, to really look at what does that look like for us. And we're learning that it's hard. Some of the things that we were investing in to take care of ourselves have been ripped away and we don't have access to. And so I'm relearning right now what that looks like for me. The biggest thing so far has been cooking. I've always loved cooking. I wanted to be a chef when I was younger. And I kind of lost it. You know, you kind of just like, especially when you're living with roommates and you're sharing spaces, like it just feels like you kind of don't get to do it anymore, especially going to college and stuff. But recently I moved into my own space, and which means my own kitchen, okay? And so I've been cooking it up. Also where I lived, I'm in direct access to this local community co-op, which is great. And so some of it looks like, okay, let me invest in a co-op membership so that I can, one, commit to staying committed to the cooking process, but also I can make sure that good things are going into my body, you know? And that feels like a direct foundational thing to really get myself grounded. What else am I doing? I am trying to just get out and walk when I can. As I said earlier, like trying to hop onto Zoom calls for social and not necessarily for work. It's not my preferred method, but just pushing myself to be like, this is how I get to have connection right now in the safest way. And so let me take advantage of it. I think there's some really tangible ways that it has looked like for me.
Okay, good. Thank you. I appreciate you, Justin, really just answering those questions for us. Well, that wraps up our Q&A session. We'll basically just thank you guys for submitting all the questions for us, and for the questions that we did not get to, we'll collect them and do our best to follow up with them. Please keep in mind that Black History Month is coming up, and there will be many more events with opportunity for dialogue and discussion. Now we will hear from Hayat.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hayat Hussein, and I use pronouns she, her, and hers. I am the president of the Ethiopian Student Association here at Augsburg, and today I will be introducing a video by our alumni Miracle that's performing the poem Inevitable. Thank you.
I police fired at Clark 20 times.
The disastrous switch. There were more protests in Dallas today over the fatal shooting of a black man inside.
Now to new reports of a controversial police stop that ended in a death, all caught on tape. Tonight, there is outrage over the case of this man who died after being restrained by police. And you'll see on this video, he repeatedly can be heard saying, quote, "I can't breathe." Minneapolis police officers were approaching George Floyd as a potential forgery suspect last night, and they alleged that he resisted arrest.
We gon' face tough times. It's inevitable. You can't say I ain't tried. Not disreputable. They won't pay us fines. They won't jail us time. It's like layup lines. It's executable. What they put that water in, when that new world order's in. Killing is a sin, but I see my people slaughtering. We just want to win, get a rose to put my daughter in. Kill me for my skin, and I guess that I'm a martyr then. See, I didn't say a word when they took on my bros, and I didn't use my voice when I shook all the shows. But now my eyes are open, so it's time to expose. I'll weave it in my songs with the finest of flows. We gon' face tough times, it's inevitable. You can't say I ain't trying, not disreputable. They won't pay us fines, they won't jail us time. It's like layup lines, it's executable. Rest in peace to Marty, he be staying litty. Never caught a body, but yeah, he be getting busy. And rest in peace to George Floyd. No, I didn't know the boy, but it's on my block, on Chicago, not no Illinois. People, they can hear my voice. Police gonna feel the noise. Make me wear a mask, they stop the truth, they keep on spreading lies. And that's why I be in disguise, waiting till the time is right. Love will conquer all, the wicked fall, and all our soldiers rise. I can't wear a hoodie. I can't even run. I can't have no kids because of dear my future son. I just got my degree. Thought I would be free. They said it was the key, but I can't even breathe. See, I'm asking all my leaders, is it chaos or community? Love is so forgiving, even if they make a fool of me. I can act surprised, but listen, this ain't nothing new to me. I've gotta make it right. I'm in the land of opportunity. So then, what to do? I let go of my iPhone because I'm 22 like Clark. The waterways try to drown me, so I had to hop on the ark. Got 4 degrees, my mom proud of me because I graduated, I'm smart. You can't win if you don't start. Black man light in the dark. Got the whole city up in flames now because they got the foot in our neck. It was 2020 driving with a semi, but the people bridge is not wrecked. We in Minneapolis, put it on the map, and you know we banging our set. That kingdom culture I rep, that's family over a check. You can't stop love, it's so patient, it's so powerful and so ancient. Love never fails with its payment, so be steadfast where you're stationed. When you stand strong, it's a statement from every tribe, every nation. Got the breath of life, so don't waste it. Let your voice is all of creation. It's a time to action formation. Gotta stand the test of tribulation. You can read it up in Revelation. Be the salt in every situation. Be the salt right where you stand. Not Lot's wife, but like Dan. Make sure you like the race that you ran. Like Drake said, God's plan.
Thank you all for participating in the 33rd Martin Luther King Jr. Convocation celebration. I want to thank again the students, staff, and faculty that were involved in making this virtual event for you all, and a special thank you for Justin Tolliver. You can reach him at Black Visions Collective. I'm going to highlight 3 important follow-ups, and then we will do our closing. So first, we have the virtual art gallery, which will be popped in our chat. So that's a makeup of different artists from around the world. It's a virtual platform using art steps. So please check that out. That link will be available throughout February. We also have an in-person gallery for students, staff, and faculty. That's on campus for this week, and it'll be in the Person Act Gallery in the Christensen Center. Also in the dining hall, lastly, the recognition of today's celebration dining services. We'll have a soul food station, which will be prepared by one of our chefs, their West Indian background. We hope that those of you on campus who can make it can partake in the culinary experience. Soul food is also another form of art, so feel free to get some food over there. You can use your meal plan or credit card or other forms of payment. We also have halal options. Lastly, we ask students, faculty, and staff who are coming to campus to be sure to follow our current health and safety practices to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And then please also look out for events from our PASU, Pan-African Student Association. They have some really powerful events that are going to be coming up for Black History Month. And lastly, we will end with our last performance of Afro Dynamics. Thank you again for your time.
She tells me she loves me, my music, my dancing attitude. She's feeling my swagger, never seen. She tells me she loves me, my music, my dancing attitude. She's feeling my swagger, never seen. I tell her, go down low, jump on me. I tell her, go down low, jump on me. Na na na, na na na, na na na.
ó lè lẹ́ everybody ẹni lẹ́ mọ́ bá ṣáà ní gbàrà o ó fẹ́ ṣe kà fún mi mi ò lógún mo ní Kúránì mo lè ṣàdúrà mi bí ṣe ṣàdúrà mi aláǹgbàdúrà mi àti lọ àti dé lẹ́yìn orí yọ ó dé ẹni bá lọ ló bá dé ìgbà tí padà dé ṣe lọ́dé mi ládé.